if we start spending so much time with the digital versions of ourselves almost, do you think it kind of risks like blurring emotional boundaries?
Absolutely. And in fact, we already have people who have unhealthy relationships with their AIs in all kinds of forms, including with AI companions. Technology has really ripped apart the fabric of society all around the world in a lot of different ways. We see it in Japan for years, we've been talking about, especially young men, kind of opting out of society. In China, they have an expression, tongping, which means kind of laying flat, and it's a not dissimilar phenomenon. So a lot of this has been caused by technology, but I do have the view that technology can be extremely helpful to solving many of these problems as well.
So how do we balance the kind of ethical side of leaning into that kind of emotional illusion, especially when there's money involved?
There's a lot to unpack with that question, which is a great question, and I think...
Hi everyone, I'm Kurt Robson, a reporter with CCN. As artificial intelligence becomes more personal, capable of reflecting our tone, our memories, even our relationships, how do we navigate the emotional and ethical boundaries of this new digital intimacy? Joining me to unpack that today is Matthew Graham, founder of Ryze Labs, and one of the leading voices at the intersection of AI and crypto. At Token 2049 in Singapore, Matthew shared a provocative keynote envisioning a world where each of us could have a digital twin. In this conversation, we go deep into the emotional ethics of that idea, how easily we can get lost in AI, the risks of forming attachments to our digital selves, and the responsibility we all have when these connections blur the line between empathy and illusion. We also talk about privacy, data ownership, and of course, how crypto and decentralization might offer a path forward. But this isn't just a conversation about technology. What happens to us when the most human parts of us live online? Here's my interview with Matthew Graham, founder of Ryze Labs, and I hope you enjoy it. So hi Matthew, great to see you again, and congrats on the Token 2049 talk.
Thank you, and really great to be here. Great to see you.
And I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what you covered at the keynote.
Sure thing. So we focused on the evolving relationship between humans and all of these AIs, LLMs specifically, obviously. I think there's been a lot of focus on the different agentic capabilities, being able to connect LLMs to the internet and all kinds of things like that. But really what fascinates me most is the human factor of how we're interacting with these LLMs. And so just as one example of that I'd like to introduce to get people thinking about it, about the ways it seems so natural for people to anthropomorphize these LLMs. Have you ever, when you're typing in Google search or Bing or whatever, have you ever found yourself saying, after you get a search result, thank you, or saying please beforehand, or hey, if you don't mind, can you search on this for me, Google? Probably not, right? I'm guessing the answer is no. But you may have, and I think many people have, found themselves communicating to LLMs, whether it be ChatGPT or something else, in a way that is highly personal, even using extra words to be polite, even saying, thanks, my next question is, which is something that's a very human way to talk to other humans. So to me, I like to just kind of introduce the topic by giving that small example of how there's a natural tendency to be polite or say thank you to LLMs, at least for me, but certainly for many other, not just for me, certainly for many people, it seems. And that's a fundamentally different way that we're interacting with technology, which I find super fascinating and opens up a whole topic that is very rich and complex to me.
And I know last time we were on, you said that you actually you've already named your digital twin. And I think we're kind of going to that kind of level of attachment to these things.
Sure.
I was wondering
So it's a little bit
ethical.
Yeah, it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I apologize. No. It's such a funny topic. I started to get a little overstimulated. So look, it's a little tongue-in-cheek, of course, but we've been playing with the concept of digital twins. And digital twins also has other meanings, such as trying to replicate some kind of object in a digital space. There's a manufacturing meaning as well. But here, what we're talking about is extending humans into the digital realm, an extension of ourselves, a digital twin of ourselves, with us being the analog twin. And you can imagine that there are some pretty interesting applications for that. Some of us remember, things like ICQ or AOL Instant Messenger, where you had an away message. Well, what if your digital twin was your away message? And here's how that could get kind of interesting, because um, as we extend the concept and we think about what this could look like, maybe not tomorrow, but maybe in a few months or a couple of years, your digital twin has access through RAG and other technologies to rich repositories of information about you, to the extent that you choose to make that happen. And so your digital twin, and then you can presumably eventually will have ways to segment this data, such that my mother, when she interacts with my digital twin, she can find out, what my Christmas plans are or something like that. Whereas someone that is a stranger to me, they can't get that information, but they can perhaps get information, I don't know, about my workout, what I like to do at the gym or something like that. And then people at work can get work related information, etc. So one interesting application in my view is that enables kind of 24/7 messaging, where your away message is your digital twin. So while I'm not sleeping, if someone has a quick question about something for work, or if my mom misses me and she wants to talk to me, she can talk to my digital twin and ask about Christmas plans, and it'll kind of feel like me. It'll have my personality. Your digital twin can become your assistant, and a version of you in the digital realm, and a way for people to have access to you when you're sleeping or otherwise occupied, to the extent that you want that to happen. Someone can, I can specify certain people that through my digital twin can get on my calendar. All kinds of interesting possibilities open up. So we've been playing with this idea, which I think is definitely going to happen in some facet. And of course, when you're trying to better understand an idea, it helps to get fully absorbed in what that might look like. And so as part of that, we started thinking, well, people's digital twins probably should have some kind of name, and it shouldn't be the person's name. I don't know. So anyway, people sometimes fat finger my name and accidentally type Marty. The R is next to the T on a QWERTY keyboard. So I decided that my digital twin maybe should be Marty, which is also, for I don't know, for some reason it's kind of a hilarious name to me as well. But anyway, it's a super fascinating concept, and I think it's one of the ways that we will be utilizing LLM and LLM adjacent technologies in really novel ways that are also quite personal. And this is happening already, and I think this will only very much accelerate in coming years, and in fact, maybe months.
So how do we balance the kind of ethical side of leaning into that kind of emotional illusion, especially when there's money involved? Because someone's going to own this digital twin, right?
Sure. So there's a lot to unpack with that question, which is a great question. And I think the most important thing is, I would frame these technologies as, I would frame all technologies basically as fundamentally amoral, meaning not moral, not immoral, but amoral, having no moral characteristics until they are applied. Just like nuclear energy, until that's used for either a bomb or producing energy for your home, it doesn't take on moral characteristics until it's kind of applied. So the point then that I would make is that we need to be both hopeful and wary, kind of at the same time. I think there's a natural, just by observation, it seems like there's a natural tendency for people to kind of want to take a side and be doomers and Luddites or Pollyanna on the other side. But these things are going to be both good and bad, and we should be hopeful and wary about that.
True.
Um, Certainly, one of the good things is, certainly with my own experience with LLMs, it's kind of reminiscent of early internet days when because I'm a little older, when I remember thinking, wow, it's just like this whole new world of information and knowledge opened up in a way that I previously had not been able to tap into. And so that was really extraordinary for me. And I
Yeah.
have a similar feeling too with LLMs, the way I'm able to research and learn about and access all kinds of information in such a rich way. It really has a similar feeling. But
Yeah.
of course, we learned from the internet that the very optimistic and hopeful early days of the internet produced a lot of things that weren't great. I think that social networks, in many ways, are fundamentally toxic. I think that the algorithms really drive people. I mean, Twitter's a cesspool, right?
For
To be
sure.
honest, right? I
For sure.
love Twitter. I'm on Twitter all the time. To me, it's like my beloved. I refuse to call it X. To me, it's my beloved Twitter, though, which I'm on all the time. But it's a cesspool,
Yeah.
and it's a cesspool with an algorithm that pits people against each other. Frankly, so and I think, and I'm picking on Twitter because it's my beloved Twitter. But I think this is largely true of most of the social networks. Facebook also is, a hellscape,
Yeah.
frankly. So there were a lot of good things that came from the internet, a lot of extraordinary things, but there are also kind of a lot of dystopian, hellish things as well. And I
Yeah.
think that probably should be our default way of thinking about the way things that could play out with AI, which with an important caveat that we can, to some extent, collectively steer that ship to be either more or less pro-social. And I would suggest that I'm not super optimistic, frankly,
Yeah.
based on how things played out with the internet, but I do think that these are choices that we kind of collectively make, and we can collectively steer that ship to be at a better or worse place. Although I'm not super optimistic, but yeah, I mean but to give it a further example, sorry, we are already seeing how people really genuinely can get kind of one-shotted by LLMs. There have been a couple people, a couple prominent examples, even, including one, I won't say his name, but people will probably know the situation that I'm talking about, with an early open AI investor who really kind of almost, it's like he had, hold on, let me try to remember the name. Like, it's almost like he had like a ayahuasca, is it called?
Yeah.
Experience.
Yeah.
Ayahuasca. Like
Yeah.
he had like the AI version of like being like, well, I'm gonna try ayahuasca once and I'll definitely be fine. You know what I mean? And he came back and he started talking on Twitter and things like that about all kinds of secret discoveries and really kind of like conspiracy theory coded and things like that
Yeah.
with him and his LLMs, and really went down a rabbit hole, and kind of like honestly kind of like a mental illness type
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
And this is cautious about using these specific examples, but look, there have been several instances of this, right? And the several instances mean like prominent people, and I think already I've heard anecdotally that there's like a bunch of people who are getting one-shotted by AI. I firmly believe AI psychosis is a real thing. Whether
100%.
that ends up in like DSM-5, I guess is what it is, or 6, or whatever the next, psychological handbook of disorders or not. I'm not the right person to ask about it, but this is a very serious thing. It's not a joke at all. So we're
Yeah.
already seeing both the extraordinary and the really quite dangerous, actually,
Yeah.
with AI. Just as we've seen with many technologies over the years, even cell phones, which are one of the great conveniences and productivity tools of modern life. But I was joking. This was not a joke. Is the thing. I was not joking. Even just yesterday, I was saying to someone, "Oh yeah, the the reason I didn't take that meeting, I had to leave early because my phone my phone was dying, and I can't be 10 seconds without my phone or I lose my damn mind." And it's actually, I said it jokingly, but I'm really not kidding.
Yeah, sure,
We're also addicted to our phones,
for sure.
and we all, I do like the phrase touch grass. We all aren't like touching grass, and in real life communication has basically nosedive. That's absolutely cell phone related. These are very much double-edged swords. AI will be no different. A small caveat that we can choose to shape that for better or worse.
The only thing with AI and digital twins that kind of goes
Yeah,
above social media and phones is that, and laptops and everything, you can
yeah,
switch it off. And I feel like when we're talking about giving so much data over to a twin and so much
for
trust,
sure, for sure,
who's going to then enforce that behavior? So, say
for sure.
I give Curti, my digital twin, my address book, etc., and it sends me to the wrong place and I'm late for something. Who then enforces that I've missed
Yeah,
that job opportunity and etc.?
for sure. So these are, you're flagging things that I absolutely think are real issues. And I suppose I would start with the privacy one.
Mm,
So, because it sounds like I would maybe responsibility of digital twin mistakes, I would kind of put that maybe a separate bucket, at least for now. But certainly the privacy issues are extraordinary and powerful. Privacy is always kind of an interesting topic because um, empirically, most people tend to say that it's one of those examples of stated versus revealed preferences or behavior. It's a good example of that, actually. So, what I mean by that is that most people, maybe not me, but most people, if you ask them how much they care about different privacy considerations, they will probably vastly overstate how much they care compared to the behavior that we can observe from them. So many people will say that they care about privacy a whole heck of a lot, but then they'll give Facebook or whomever basically kind of anything and everything, right?
mm,
With me, I would probably say, excuse me, that it's not one of the top things on my list. In fact, like for example, with ChatGPT, I give them like all kinds of health stuff, like my blood pressure. I upload things for, and I say, analyze my body composition. Is it improving? Is it A, B, or C? Things like that. So for me, I'm pretty. I mean, Sam Altman has my nudes, basically, right? You know, it's not ideal, but if I'm being honest, he does, right? So
yeah.
body composition or whatever, right?
Mhm.
Um, but I would say it like this. I would say, first of all, it's a very real situation because, as we know, many of these AI companies are using all of this information for training purposes, right? So it's already a hugely important privacy consideration for that. Secondly, the type of information in many ways is even more sensitive than the type of information that you would have related to your Google search history, things like that. I sometimes joke um, that I would rather have, like, if I had a choice between 2 years of Google search history being public versus 2 weeks of ChatGPT, that I'd choose Google search. But again, I'm not really sure it's a joke because it's like, yeah, Google search history, you could embarrass me. I'd be like, yeah. I'd be like, okay, that is the kind of porn I like, or whatever. But ChatGPT, you could like get in my head. You know what I mean? You could probably make me cry or whatever, right? To be like, it's a whole different level of sensitivity. So the stakes, kind of from a privacy perspective, have never been higher. And that really, it's really a big issue when you start talking about these big companies. I mean, OpenAI obviously is already a huge company, and we're already seeing that this is highly likely to be an oligopolistic market. Shouldn't be a surprise, but now we're seeing evidence of that. So we're going to have a small number of companies that probably are going to be running ads, that are probably going to be mining our data for fine-tuning purposes, which is especially sensitive because, as we now know, when you fine-tune on data, you frequently have echoes of that data that you were fine-tuning on showing up in the later LLM behavior. So it's especially sensitive for that. I really think it's a huge problem. Interestingly, I think crypto is probably uniquely well positioned to provide a solution to this problem. So for even a variety of reasons, obviously we're all about decentralization, and we started about our genesis was being a counterpoint to bank monopoly power, but I think we're equally well positioned to being a counterweight for tech monopoly power. And beyond decentralization, you can start talking about, I mean, it's all the crypto themes. You can start talking about having sovereign control of your digital twins and AI companions, such that you own that rather than OpenAI or whomever. We can talk about how to have these kinds of privacy protection. I mean, look at 23andMe, right? I don't know the whole details, right? But I think they got sold, right? And so all that genetic data that initially was protected with the terms and conditions is no longer protected because of the new buyer. You'll have to confirm these details. But the point is that if it's not on chain, if it's not protected by smart contracts and things like that, you never really know. So this is, again, a crypto story where all these privacy protections can be on chain and immutable. We can start talking about the information repositories that are necessary to make some of these things like digital twins work. Well, it's kind of natural to think that those could be encrypted on IPFS or Arweave. All of our technologies are really uniquely well suited to AI in a way that I think is an enormous opportunity. Obviously, payments are another one as well, because I think it's obvious. I would suggest that at least it's obvious to me that many of these AI agents, if not digital twins and AI companions, are going to be transacting. They're going to be economic actors in some respect. Maybe I'll tell digital twin, maybe I'll tell Marty to go shopping for the family, right? Just many possibilities, right? They're definitely going to be economic actors. It seems probably unlikely that Marty is going to have an account at, Chase Manhattan Bank, right? Doesn't super make sense to me. So this seems more likely to be a crypto payment story rather than PayPal or even Stripe, and certainly rather than a TradFi bank, right? So the interesting thing when we start talking about AI is not just AI agents, but digital twins, companions, and such. I really think that we are set up to have this be one of the great PMFs in the history of our industry. And we basically had, I mean, 3 or 4, right? We've had hard money, we've had stable coins, and we've had gambling. We've kind of had 3, right? If we're being honest. DeFi frequently being thinly disguised gambling, right?
Mm.
So
Defo.
hyper speculation, stable coins, and hard internet money, I would suggest, have been the three overwhelming PMFs in our industry. And at least off the top of my head, that's our three home runs. And I would suggest that AI potentially is the big number four.
Mm.
So I think it's just because of the way all these the cultures, AI people and crypto people don't super match up, even though obviously all extremely technical, very smart people, but the cultures aren't necessarily an obvious match. But everything on the tech side absolutely seems like very fortuitous in terms of alignment.
Mm. And we've seen a lot about the kind of AI and crypto convergence. But how far would you say we are from an agent actually living on chain? Do you think crypto rails right now can handle that level of like complex computer systems needed to have something at that level?
I think probably that's kind of a definitional question. We would have to talk about what exactly does that mean to have an AI agent live on chain and things like that.
Mm.
But I mean, all of these technologies are moving extremely quickly. I'm not sure as with many things, the pace of change on a macro level throughout the world, throughout society, continues to increase both the first and second derivatives. And certainly as part of that, the pace of change in EI arguably is even faster than the pace of change in crypto has ever been. So the nexus of two enormously dynamic industries, it's going to move really, really fast. That's kind of the headline for me.
Yeah. Going back to the ethics side, because I find it so
Sure.
interesting. If we start spending so much time with the digital versions of ourselves, almost, do you think it kind of risks like blurring emotional boundaries to an extent where I know you mentioned a little bit before, but to the extent where we kind of lose connection to ourselves, and do we have an obligation to kind of push back against that?
Sure. So I think there is a huge danger of that. And so I do think that just as in general, these technologies have good and bad aspects to them, that's also true for the specific aspects relating to, connection and companionship and things like that. So there's absolutely a danger that someone could get, just as parasocial relationships can be unhealthy, so-called relationships between people and celebs that don't even know who they are. There absolutely, and in fact, we already have people who have unhealthy relationships with their AIs in all kinds of forms, including with AI companions. Uh, in terms of being overly reliant on connection and companionship from them in a way that's interfering with the real world and human relationships and things like that. In terms of thinking of AI companions as people in a way that's unhealthy because you're allowing them to influence your actions in some kind of negative, fundamentally unhealthy way, many ways. But on the other hand, I think we've all kind of seen that technology has really ripped apart the fabric of society all around the world in a lot of different ways, honestly. And we've seen this manifest itself everywhere, all kinds of people. And it's been going on for a long time and it's been accelerating. We see it in Japan for years, we've been talking about, especially young men, kind of opting out of society. Um, in China, they have an expression "tongping," which means kind of laying flat, and it's a not dissimilar phenomenon. In the United States, it really seems to me like the relationships, the interactions between young and men, women have fundamentally been disrupted. I mean, the rate at which people are having sex has basically nosedived. It's really extraordinary.
Mm.
So we've got all kinds of people working from home. We've got all kinds of different situations which lead to really almost an epidemic of people that have an untapped need for more connection, more companionship. Um, excuse me. This certainly is extremely true for subgroups like the elderly as well, as people continue to live longer and longer.
No.
So a lot of this has been caused by technology, but I do have the view that technology can be extremely helpful to solving many of these problems as well.
Yeah, definitely. And let's zoom
So
out a little
again,
bit.
it's good and bad. It's really up to us to steer the ship. Technology is amoral. That's my fundamental view, I guess.
What's the most realistic example of this vision kind of happening today that you can point to? Like something tangible that we can look and say this is going to happen and this is happening right now.
Sure. So I suppose it really is about which specific aspect of the vision, but I would say this. I would say one thing that has been fascinating to me as a longtime uh, super fan of Reddit, um, and the thing about Reddit is I know they do it it's gamification to keep people more involved, obviously, to keep people coming back day after day. But as with many apps like Reddit, when you open it up, they show you like your streak of how many consecutive days you've used it.
Mm-hmm.
It's horrifying for me.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm up to like 300. I mean, it's not okay, honestly.
That's good going, over 300.
It's not okay. So obviously I like to, it's a way that I get my news and I don't know.
Mm.
And
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
like a few spare couple minutes here and there and things like that. See what's going on, see what's out there. I have all my subscribed subreddits. Now I'm honestly just making excuses for the 300 days.
Is there
But
less AI bots on Reddit?
what's that?
Is there less AI bots on Reddit than X? Because I'm not the most.
There's still a lot of bots, but for sure still a lot of bots, but with the way it's organized, at least to me, it feels less intrusive with the way the upvotes and downvotes work.
Yeah, no, that's
Um,
good.
but so where I'm going with this though is one thing that has been fascinating to me is there are a number, maybe a dozen or even more subreddits, more I'm sure, that are focused narrowly on AI human interactions. One, I think, I mean, they're like, AI is my boyfriend or something like that. And I mean, or my boyfriend is AI, I guess, was maybe one of them. So I like to go in these subreddits and see how people are talking about these things. And it's really quite fascinating. I mean, if the question that's being posed, I guess, is what is a way or even the best way to get a sense of what the future holds in terms of what we've been talking about today, including specifically the way humans interact with AI and will interact with AI. One of the best ways to get a glimpse of that, in my view, is to go in some of the subreddits where people are talking about their AI companions and AI boyfriends and girlfriends and things like that, and to get a little bit of a sense of it, the good and the bad,
Mhm.
and it's really something. I'll have to tell you, but
Yeah.
I firmly believe that this is going to happen at scale.
Mm. So just to finish off, what should we know about Ryze Labs and what's the kind of interest you guys are showing at the moment into this space?
Sure. So obviously, we're extremely focused at the intersection of AI and crypto, and we're working with some pretty cool projects uh, I suppose, just about to come out of stealth. So we're very excited about that. So I'll
Mhm.
have to be a little bit careful about what I say, but I can say, for example, that Amico did a little bit of a pivot and is about to come out of stealth and make some big announcements about their pivot. And
Mhm.
they are squarely focused on digital twins and AI companions in the context of AI social. And I think what they're working on is absolutely fascinating. And I think it has potential to be a smash hit. So I would say that that's one thing that we're pretty excited about.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for joining me again. Always great to chat to you. And
Thank you
yeah,
so much. It's been great.
thanks very much.
Thank you.